Hey guys, today we're talking 5 bourbons I think that would be perfect for any guest. Let's do this.
I'd always give a sign. Hair like fire. You set it on the flames, yeah. You just burning it all down. Take it all, it's never enough.
Let's start off with number 1, tried and true, good old Wild Turkey. You really wouldn't have to go any further than this. This kind of hits just about every portion of a whiskey that anybody would really enjoy. Anywhere from cocktails to a couple of sippers. In a pinch, you really could sip on all 3 of these. But first out of the gate, Wild Turkey 101. Again, a really nice sipping bourbon as well. Typically probably used a little bit more for cocktails, but again, it's a great alternative to, again, whether you're sipping and or cocktails. Now these 2 bad boys right here, tried and true, good old Rare Breed and Russell's Reserve Single Barrel. Both absolutely fantastic bourbons. And again, I think 2 bourbons that would fit or meet a lot of people's criteria for something that they really would enjoy sipping on. Again, Rare Breed coming in at basically a cask strength bourbon, Russell's Reserve Single Barrel coming in at 110 proof. Both absolutely fantastic sippers, or 3 bourbons that I think would be perfect for any guest. Now again, this is a list in no particular order. This is just 5 bourbons that I feel you should always have on hand or would be perfect for really any guest. This for me, the Four Roses Small Batch Select, is a bourbon that I seem to always bang the drum. It's just a bourbon that I feel on its own is an incredible bourbon. Coming in at 104 proof, non-age stated. For the longest time, we as whiskey enthusiasts asked Four Roses to put together something that would be, a little bit more than just their single barrel, some of their Four Roses small batch. They finally kind of listened, blended a few of their recipes together to create the Four Roses Small Batch Select. And for me, a couple years ago was my bourbon of the year. I thought hands down, it was an absolutely incredible bourbon, incredible value for what it was that you were getting. So for me, again, the Four Roses Small Batch Select is, I don't want to say the perfect bourbon, but it is an absolutely fantastic bourbon, and I think really one that everyone should have on hand and be ready to provide to any guest really at any time. It's a real crowd pleaser the majority of the time. So again, Four Roses Small Batch Select for me is a bourbon that needs to be on your list. Now third up is Maker's Mark Cask Strength. For me, again, this is another whiskey that I find myself recommending, and one that again I think is perfect for any guest, is a bourbon that you need to have at home at all times. It really hits the mark for me with what it is that Maker's Mark really wants to be about. This is their bourbon in the purest form, their Maker's Mark at cask strength. So I know they've got their standard Makers, which is a incredible bourbon on its own. This, again, just at cask strength. And again, these proofs will vary at times. So they don't fluctuate that much, maybe between a couple proof points. But at the end of the day, you've got a wheated bourbon from Maker's Mark. Again, tried and true brand, a brand that's been around for an awful long time. There's the consistency that they always have in producing fantastic bourbons. And again, at a price point of around $40 to get a cask strength wheated bourbon, I think again, this is just one of those bourbons that you need to have ready for any guest that comes over. Again, I think it's one of those bourbons that would really appeal to an awful lot of people. So, there you have it. Again, this is the Maker's Mark cask strength. Again, right around that $40 price point, cask strength wheated bourbon. Really, what more can you ask for? Well, next up on the list is for me, probably one of my favorite bourbons out there that is readily available, one that is probably easy for just about anybody to get, and that's the Old Forester 1920. This bourbon, I've always asked myself, why is this on the shelf so much? For me, if you had this bourbon in highly allocated or more difficult bottles to get, there would be a lot of people that would be going crazy over this. This thing comes in at 115 proof, and dare I say, the perfect bourbon. It is something that, again, a lot of whiskey enthusiasts really enjoy. I still think it's slightly underrated for what it is, its flavor profile, you know, price point right around, again, that $60, $65, price. Again, I think for what this is, you're getting an incredible bourbon at a really good price. And again, it's readily available. It's just about everywhere you go. And it's one that I find myself wanting to sip on quite often, you know, just because I know what the profile is. Now, for me, Old Forester is probably one of my favorite brands in terms of what that has to offer. I love those kind of chocolate, heavier fruit notes, you know, some of those nice barrel char notes, you know, things along those lines, heavy brown sugars. So again, I think it's a great profile that would, generally speaking, appeal to an awful lot of people. And again, at 115 proof, readily available, it's really, really hard to beat the Old Forester 1920. So for me, again, this is a bourbon that really would be perfect, I think, for any guest, and a bourbon that you should always have on hand. Well, coming in last, but definitely not least, Knob Creek Single Barrel. I would even say you could lump in the Knob Creek 120 proof as well and interchange both of those as well. But these higher proof Knob Creek, either single barrels and or the 120 proof, is again just another incredible bourbon that oftentimes sits on the shelves at a lot of, you know, liquor stores, wherever it is you're picking up your bourbon. But at this price point of right around that, let's say $50, price, it's a real difficult bourbon to walk away from. Oftentimes the 120 proof or even the age stated 9-year 100 proof, they are really fantastic valued bourbons, an awful lot of flavor, great profile. Again, Knob Creek can have a little bit of that slight kind of nutty profile that for some may not like it, but to offer this up and at this value, and generally speaking, it's a bourbon that you can go into just about any liquor store and find. May not always find an actual single barrel like a club pick or a store pick, but oftentimes they will have just a standard single barrel sitting on the shelves, you know. And again, they offer the 9-year 100 proof or the 120 proof that will be there as well. So again, for me to have this bourbon at your home, and again, perfect for just about any guest. I think all of these bourbons that I've suggested today would all fit in someone's particular category or palate for a bourbon that they would really enjoy. So if nothing else, go through all 5 of them or the 7 that I ultimately had and allow people to try a few of these to see what it is they prefer overall. But again, all of these bourbons are ones that I think you should always have on hand or would be the perfect bourbon for any guest. So there you have it. Here is my list of 5 plus 2 bourbons that I think would be the perfect bourbon for any guest or the perfect bourbon to have at home and on hand at any time. Again, a quick little recap: Wild Turkey 101, Rare Breed, Russell's Reserve Single Barrel, Four Roses Small Batch Select, Maker's Mark Cask Strength, Old Forester 1920, and Knob Creek Single Barrel. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in today. Leave a comment below. Let me know if this is a list that you're kind of on board with, if there's some other ones that you would generally recommend to some of your friends, family, whatever it may be. But again, this was my idea of 5 bourbons that you should always have on hand or would be the perfect bourbon to have for any guest. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in to another review. If you'd like to follow me, you can on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all of those places at My Bourbon Journey. If you'd like to help support the channel and become part of the Mash and Journey Whiskey Club, make sure you check out the link and links in the description below. A lot of good stuff down there for you as well. So again, thank you guys. Remember, it's about the journey, and not the destination. Cheers.
I knew it right there.